from yesterday, every 30-mile-an-hour zone in Wales dropped down to a 20. And we're going to be talking to Nick Freeman, our guest. He was historically known as the man who was very good at helping people get off things like speeding tickets, when they're absolutely innocent, I might add. But he did get himself the name Mr. Loophole. Nick, thank you for coming on Talk TV.
Good afternoon, Jay.
Good to see you. I wonder if you have had the opportunity to visit Wales in the last 24 hours. Have you been in the slow lane, Nick?
Not in the last 24 hours, but I have been there quite recently. And they already had some 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. And as in London, it's counterintuitive. It's artificially slow. And whilst I can see arguments for it in London because of the high congestion, the density, the traffic, Wales is largely rural. There's something like 5 million acres for 1.6 million drivers. And it just really makes no sense. I think everyone's in favour of road safety, but surely the answer to that is just to find the sweet spot and say, look, school opening and closing time, hospitals, let's have a dynamic speed limit around those areas at certain times of the day. And that deals with everyone's concern. A 20-mile-an-hour limit does not have the will of the people. Already it's being treated a little bit like Margaret Thatcher's poll tax. I think they've invested something like £32 million in changing the signage, which is already being vandalised, which of course is illegal, and I certainly won't be encouraging people to do that.
So I think it's, you're absolutely right, it's 33 million of our cash that has been spent with this preaching, this new gospel. Look, so I'm a Lancastrian, I live in Helmshire in Lancashire. This was tried actually by Lancashire County Council, where they did all the side streets, the 20s Plenty campaign, lots of local authorities in the UK have done it, did all the side streets as 20-mile-an-hour zones. But where I live, there's a road called Broadway, which has always been a 30, and they changed it into a 20. And when they first did it, a police officer overtook me when I was doing about 17 miles an hour, put his window down, told me to pull over and said, "Why are you driving so slowly?" And I said, "Because it's a 20-mile-an-hour limit and you have just broken the law by overtaking me." Anyway, so that collapsed the 20-mile-an-hour on Broadway because no one accepted it. In fact, people vandalised the signs, police officers were overtaking you, and they changed that to there's 1, 2, 3 schools on there, so they changed that to a 20-mile-an-hour zone with interactive signs where during a school day. So it's 30 miles an hour on a Saturday morning. Why do you think Wales hasn't gone down that route of more sort of dynamic road speed limits and just gone with this blanket 20 on all roads with streetlights?
Mark Drayford?
Well, that's a good succinct no. So let me ask you another question, Nick. How fast can I go on a 20-mile-an-hour? Obviously, I'd never go more than 20 mile an hour. But how fast can I go on a 20-mile-an-hour road without being done? Is it? We've read in the papers over the weekend. Is it 10% plus 3 miles an hour?
No. That's that. No. You used to be prosecuted at 10% plus 3, so there was a tolerance zone of 10% plus 2. So within that zone, you were free. This is assuming, of course, all the signage and everything else about the case is correct. But let's just, for the sake of this discussion, assume that's right. At the moment, it's 10% plus 1. So 22 miles an hour is the 10% plus 1, 23. So they would start prosecuting you at 24. And look, they're going to exercise their discretion initially. They're going to have a chat with people. But I think the feeling is so strong, it's so anti, that I think the Welsh Government are going to have a serious battle on their hands. And, the cost to the economy is estimated at being 4.6 billion pounds per year. They're not awash with money at the moment. And I don't think the Welsh taxpayer is going to be happy about having to dig deep to fund the shortfall. OK, well, they're going to be getting a lot in fines, though. Who gets to keep the fines? Is it the police, the local council, or is it the Welsh Government? A mixture of both. And the money should be reinvested in road structure and infrastructure. And obviously that doesn't always happen. But it doesn't generate that amount of money. And I think in this case, as you just alluded to in Lancaster, what's going to happen is people are going to be going slower than 20 miles an hour because they're going to be fixated with their speedometer. They're going to be paranoid about speed and literally nothing else. And of course, speed, it's bad driving that causes the problem. We need to be spatially aware. We don't want to be driving along fixated with speedometers, because that doesn't make for good drivers. We need to be looking at a whole host of things, including speed, but not just speed. And at this level, it's counterintuitive. And when you think of sort of people, of professional drivers driving at 3, 4 in the morning, and they're sitting on empty roads at 20 miles an hour, it's going to be enormously frustrating, not good for their mental health and not good for the economy. There's no sense. There's a very easy solution. And, I was being slightly facetious when I said Mark Drayford, but it just doesn't make any sense. And when things don't make sense, it alienates the support with the public and the police. And at a time when, if, God forbid, you're burgled, they give you a crime reference number. They can't afford any further alienation. So they need to get a grip of this quickly. Otherwise, they've got serious trouble on their hands, in my view.
Well, let's see how long it lasts. Bushra, are you a 20-mile-an-hour fan?
I'm not a 20-mile-an-hour fan. I'm also a motorist. I get why we need it in London. And Nick's right. I don't understand why they're actually implementing this in Wales. You see, the thing about me is I often wonder why we're becoming a police state, because essentially what they're trying to say is that we are stupid and we don't know that we should drive slower. So they give us all these rules to say you have to. And this is, again, about bad drivers. So we need to fix it.
We've always had a speed limit. So I want to... You say you're a driver. Breaking news for you here, Bushra, in the studio. There has always been a speed limit, and we are ultimately a state that enforces speed limits. Why not 20 miles an hour?
Because in some places it is a snail pace, and we can use our discretion and our common sense and intelligence to say, don't go this fast.
Speed limits have never been about common sense. You can't say to a police officer, let's got a brilliant lawyer like Nick Freeman, he might help me, but you can't say to a police officer, it's a 30, but there's no cars around, so I thought I'd do 39 miles an hour.
Oh, totally. I mean, this is, again, like Nick says, it's about bad drivers. And I'm telling you, a speed limit does not deter them. No. They will still be bad drivers.
People still drive like it is. Nick, so you've spoken about this finally for you, and thank you for joining us. A bit like being like the poll tax. And funnily enough, this weekend I was talking to my wife, and we were saying the same thing, not just in relation to this, but also in relation to the ULEZ. The last time we saw mass public disobedience of the type that you're seeing in London, with literally hundreds of cameras in the ULEZ having been disabled or stolen, was during the poll tax. Sometimes in politics, and I say this as a politician myself, if a law is unjust, the people rebel. What do you think we will see in Wales? I know people have got red ribbons on their front bumpers, which they're tying on. What else do you think we'll see in Wales? Obviously, we're not encouraging it, but let's say what we may see in terms of the unjust nature of this law.
Let's make it clear, we're not encouraging any sort of vigilante behaviour. But lorry drivers have said they're going to crawl at 19 miles an hour, so they're going to cause massive congestion, massive tailbacks. People are already painting over the signs. And if the signs are painted over, the speed limit then, of course, becomes unenforceable because it has to comply with the 2016 regulations. So, people are incentivized to actually disfigure the signs, and then they have a complete defense. And, I suppose at the end of the day, we don't see police on the street, certainly in this country, really, do we? We see a few in London, but generally I drive to London regularly. You literally see no one. So we're used to robotical speeding, robotical policing. So they're going to have to put a lot of cameras up to enforce this. Otherwise, it's just not, it hasn't got the will of the people. And my view is this is in danger of being a step too far. And as I say, I think there will be a problem. And I think they will hopefully see common sense, maybe with a change of government, and say, look, under certain circumstances, we need to enforce 20 miles an hour. And people then respect it and say, yes, it makes sense. But a blanket 20 miles an hour makes no sense, and it's counterintuitive. And the other thing to remember is it has no impact on the environment at all. It's actually pollution neutral. So the green credentials are completely lost in this argument. And there's this huge cost to the economy. So it hasn't got a lot going for it.
And Nick, of course, it is another thing like the ULEZ. So actually, I haven't heard anyone else say this, but this is against working class families who have got an older car. So if you have got a new car due to developing car technologies, you flick a button, which is your speed limiter, which all cars have had on for the last couple of years. I don't think much longer than that, but they have had it via an EU statute that we adopted here in the UK, and it limits your speed. So you can put your limiter on to go 20, 30, 40, 50, the speed limit may be. Of course, if you're driving an older car, you won't have that technology. And a bit like ULEZ is catching people who've got an older, maybe more polluting diesel car or van, this will be catching lower income families who just don't have that money to go out and dip their non-existent savings account to buy a new car with a speed limiter.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the people with the shallowest pockets who are caught. And I should add that many modern cars actually won't. You can't fix the limiter at 20 miles an hour. It's actually too slow. And the other point, Jake, is many cars now are automatic. And the natural rolling speed of a car, I know when I drive down to London, go down the M6, M1, get onto the Edgware Road, I'm constantly touching my brakes because the car wants to go 22, 23 miles an hour. So I'm actually causing a problem. And it's just unnatural. It's counterintuitive. Why do we buy cars? We buy cars so we can get there faster than we can walk. We're in danger, actually, reversing that. And having cycles that overtake you. That Sadiq Khan said last week, I think actually it was Jeremy Vine, that we should pull over and let cyclists overtake us. That's not really why we buy a car, is it? Certainly not why.
No, look, I'm a mad keen car owner and a bit of a petrol head, so I certainly don't buy my car to go at 20 miles an hour, although I always remain within the speed limit. But I will have to go 20 miles an hour now in Wales. Bushra, final thought for you before we go to our break. Do you think there is this issue that the Labour Party hasn't picked up again about how this is hitting working families harder than the more wealthy ones?
Well, look, I'm just going to maybe win this segment just by saying that ULEZ for me is a huge con. It's a huge con. And somebody said to me the other day, Bushra, do you think if a new government comes in that they will take it away? And to be honest, I think if they can, especially Sadiq Khan, who's been pushing this, if they can expand the ULEZ zones, they will.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right, well, thank you. So if you're listening or watching Mark Drakeford, think again. And Bushra, I think Bushra has nailed him there, and Sadiq Khan as well. Think again. This is Talk TV.